You are listening to the extreme metal podcast Necropolis, which is brought to you by Jason from Goatcraft and Shelly from HateMeditations.com and Metal Legion magazine. Welcome to Necropolis. I am Jason, also known as Lone Goat from Necroclassical Project Goatcraft. So Shelly is back today for a wonderful episode. Welcome back, Mr. Shelly from HateMeditations.com and Metal Legion magazine.
Hello. Yeah, it's great to be back.
Yep, always a pleasure having you on here for the little British side of the metal spectrum. So today we do have Jarno Nurmi from Serpent and Desecresy, who's also on a pretty popular project called Nurlik. So Jarno, I want to thank you 1,000 times for coming on this program. We hung out in Finland a couple months ago, and we drank quite a bit, and I really hadn't drank that hard since England, but hanging out with you was a blast. It was great to hang out.
Yeah, it was great, and thank you for inviting me here. And yeah I think we drank a lot.
Yeah, so we met up. Like, he was at a bar like a block or two away from the hotel I was staying at. So it was like just met up right after Beharit actually settled me in Helsinki. And so we drank really hard, and the next day we went to the Helsinki Philharmonic with Marco from Beharit, and we were still hurting that afternoon, from drinking the night before.
Yeah,
good times. And also met some of his friends, and saw where a library that he worked at in Helsinki, where he actually got metal CDs in that library for people to check out, as well as he recorded some of the vocals for Desecresy in that Helsinki library, correct?
Yeah, there was actually like a small studio in the library, which everyone could use. And because I was working there, I could just go there for the night and stay the whole night recording there when the library was closed. So that was like a good to have.
Yeah, you gave me the little tour of, places that used to be your old stomping grounds, because you used to live in Helsinki, and now you live like 7 hours north, correct?
Yeah, at the moment we live in Oulu, and we moved here from Rovaniemi, which is a little bit north from here, so getting southern once again.
Cool. So speaking about that Hyperborean nature of your homeland, I know you're also an archaeologist. So do you feel a natural attachment to northern Finland, correct?
Yes, I think I do. And I would say that we have some kind of like a family history in northern Finland. So it has felt like quite natural to return here. And for long, I lived in Helsinki for a very long time, and at some point I just started feeling that maybe I should move somewhere in the north.
I see. So you're also in Beharit's old town, correct? Or am I?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
that's Rovaniemi, where
so
Beharit is from.
You've actually been to the mall where that footage is of like Marco when he was like 17 playing in a mall with Beharit. You actually know which mall that is?
Yeah, it's basically it's in the center of the town, so it's very familiar place. So that would be a great place for you to visit next time when you come to Finland.
Yeah, there's still a lot I want to do in Finland, and I was only there a week, but there's like you said, there's so much to do. And there's like, even just in Helsinki, there was a lot of stuff I didn't do there that I still want to do. So Finland is like great, and went hiking, saw a whole bunch of pagan stuff, and went to a castle, went to a jail, went to the Sibelius Museum. I actually got to play on the Steinway there a little bit, and it was a great place all around. And everyone actually, the vast majority of people know English in Finland, correct?
Yeah, I think most Finnish people speak quite good English, and so it's easy to come here.
Yeah. May possibly do that in the future, not the near future, but may of course go back. I have lots of friends there, including yourself, and I actually met one of your bandmates from Cosmic Church. We drank with him one night, and he was really cool. And he was he'll give me a history about Finland and drinking being the national disease, quote unquote. And here we are just pounding them back like crazy. And yeah, definitely livers of steel in Finland. Like, had a hard time keeping up. I was pretty wasted, but great times, hanging out with everyone there. And we hung out a few days, and it was very cool just to chill. And we went to metal bars too. And we like the metal bars were playing like mainstreamy, like death metal and stuff like that, which kind of irked us. But we got them to play some like early Morbid Angel and stuff, and even Beherit, which is funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a great time.
Yeah, basically, you always have to ask for your own favorite songs and so on, because usually they play this like metalcore and that kind of stuff more. And there's not so many good metal bars anymore. So you have to do with those that still exist and try to turn them into better places.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I remember us. We were just both really bliss and griping about like the false metal that they're playing. But anyway, just kind of establishing that Finland connection for this episode. You feel a great attachment to Finland and your new album, Hyperborean Folklore. I mean, you just think about, where you reside. You're also an archaeologist, so you have a great understanding about the history of Finland and all the Hyperborean aspects of that. So what's most striking about this new album of yours, Hyperborean Folklore, is that you just decided to do your own thing. Serpent Sending was really just a death metal project, which had its own flair. Like, you have your own distinctive style, especially some of the developments and leads, and the way you layer things is very distinctive. But with this new album, you just kind of, it's like you wanted to do. I saw in the promo, like, it's this epic metal, which usually when people talk about like epic metal, they talk about like long durations, which the songs are quite long, but there's just this great synthesis of a lot of different styles being infused, from like old metal to black metal and prog and ambient a little bit, especially with some of the acoustics and stuff that you're able to implement in there. So why did you decide to take a Serpent Ascending in a completely different direction?
Well, I think it wasn't so like a straightforward decision. I just think that I was already like writing some of the songs and some parts for the songs actually already while I was already writing the previous album, Ananku. So it just happened somehow that it came out quite naturally and quite intuitively, or it was quite easy to write, I think. And I just thought that I won't be like restricting myself on this album. So I'll just write for what feels natural this time. And I think I had some kind of idea of just combining all these things that I was like enjoying so much, and didn't really think I should like force myself to play only death metal or something like that. But I think I tried to include some like death metal. There was a like song that didn't end up on the album, but I just felt that it didn't fit there so well. So I just thought that, okay, I will not have any of this kind of elements on this one. So just wanted to see where it would lead, and this is the result, I think.
Yeah, it's quite a hard album to define in that way, because there's all these different elements in there, but I wouldn't call it like a death metal album or a black metal album specifically, but it's also got like elements of like melodic heavy metal in there, and as Jason said, prog, but it all kind of flows really nicely. It sort of all comes together to a really kind of unified like end result that kind of comes together really well, even though you're sort of struggling to place it when you're listening to it, but that's kind of a good thing in a way.
Yeah, I think there were already like similar elements on Ananku, but maybe they were not like so much on the front, or you could still think it's like a death metal album. There were like a couple of songs like Garelides, which is like, I think it's quite close to what I was doing on like Hyperborean folklore. But yeah, I just thought that I was somehow getting more into like finding some kind of new passion for metal and all kind of like progressive rock music, which I've been listening to for a long time. So I took some elements from there and still continued with like the similar style I wrote or write music. So it was, I think I've been making like very flowing albums previously. So I think just continued a little bit different direction with it.
Yeah, you can definitely see the continuity with like the previous album, but yeah, it does, like, it brings forward those much brighter kind of aspects a lot more. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it works really well because of that. So yeah, were you listening to anything in particular as like inspiration? Were there any influences that you consciously drew, or was it just more of an organic process?
Yeah, the album was like written quite quickly, so it was like maybe it took like 1 month or something to write, and of course there were like bits and pieces ready, and I tried to like work on them and so on, but I didn't have like very strong influences at that moment. Just basically the same things that I've been listening to for years. So it was just like, maybe I wanted to take that certain parts from the previous album and to work on them a little bit more. Like some of those, like there are some like a more melodic parts and a little bit like progressive things going on. So maybe I just wanted to try how I could work on them and how it would sound like to make an album with that kind of music.
Yeah, going back to that continuity that Shelley was talking about, and what you said about wanting to create flowing music, that's a great word to describe your music in general. Serpent Ascending, there's some tracks even on the Enigma Unsettled where the interplay between the riffs, like how they flow, is very, very well structured, where it takes the listener on a little journey, a little micro journey, and the way you add those layers of leads and flurries, it really just I think that's what really makes you very distinctive. Of course, you have your own style of riff craft and all of that, but just the flowing nature and how you layer things is what really sets Serpent Ascending apart from like other traditional death metal bands. Because honestly, like you can see like the underbelly of the project is really rooted in like early 90s death metal, but the way that you stitch together riffs and you expand on themes, it shows a great like cultivated aspect to the music, in my opinion. So I know we discussed this while I was in Helsinki, but you asked me how I approach writing music, and I just told you I do it on a whim pretty much. But can you tell the listeners like how you approach the songwriting process, like when you're expanding upon a theme, like with a certain riff or anything like that?
Yeah, usually I have like some kind of part of music that is like playing in my head. Then I start to think and how I could like play it on guitar, because I'm not that good at playing guitar. I could just play whatever comes to my mind. So I just try to listen to what is the melody or whatever I have in my head, then try to find the right places how to play it on guitar, and then I will start to like work on that and maybe find where it could be taken in the next part. And maybe that's basically how I do it. And then usually I might start like experimenting on some like chords and different kind of notes and how they could fit together. So I don't usually go jamming or anything. So I just start writing and creating those songs. So I'm not having so much fun on the guitar and playing all the good stuff. I just like try to get this thing outside from my head. That's basically
That's
how
really
I
interesting.
write music.
So it starts out initially just with an idea in your head, whether it's a melody or how you want to take a song, and
Yeah.
you're able to create, mimic, replicate that on guitar or that melody or whatever in your head, and you go from there. There's so many musicians that the way they compose is first they start playing, and then they create stuff while playing. That's a interesting take. That first it comes from like a melody in your head that you want to externalize and express. So that's quite a different approach than most guitarists, I would say.
Yeah, I think most people start playing something and find something interesting. Of course, I might find some riffs might get born in that way, but usually I have already like idea in my head. Like I would say that I'm already having like few ideas for the next album, which I have never played those ideas, but they are in my head and I just try to remember them all. Maybe at some point I will get to my guitar and try to play them.
So when we were chatting in Helsinki, you said like this Hyperborean Folklore is more like a one-off type of album that you did, that you just wanted just to do, just something from left field that you want to externalize, like some of your main influences that you couldn't do in a proper death metal format. But you mentioned that you would be going back to death metal for your next releases, correct?
I think I'm not going back to death metal only, but I will probably try and find something between this new album and the previous one, and maybe make a kind of synthesis of them or something like this. This is maybe just a initial idea for the next album, and it can change to any other direction as well. But I have something like that in my mind at the moment.
Cool. So more like a synthesis of the traditional death metal that you expressed early on, with kind of the avant-garde take on metal that you have now with Hyperborean Folklore.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I think it's like, as I'm just more like a solo artist doing music, it's somehow like having different kind of periods in this like a musical career, or what you would call it, and doing like a different things in different times and having different kind of phases throughout the years.
So would you say you prefer working alone because it gives you that freedom to pretty much take it wherever you want?
Well, at least with Serpent Ascending, I think, of course, I could work with other people in some other bands, but I think I have been like thinking a lot, like forming a full band around Serpent Ascending, but I don't know. I have like my own way of working and kind of own schedule, so it would be like difficult to have like other members, because it would like take a couple of years before there was any, without like having any band activity. So maybe people would get a little bit bored with it.
Yeah, especially being in Finland, like you're an archaeologist, so during the summer months you're digging up bones and relics from the past, whereas during the winter that's when you can be productive with music and everything's covered in snow, right?
Yeah, and of course I have quite a lot of things to do, all my studies and other things, and probably there wouldn't be so much time for having rehearsals and having at least not too many gigs or anything like that. So I think I have my own little space
Yeah,
where I can.
yeah, it definitely seems like you have your own expression that, hypothetically, if you were to get together that live band, you would still dictate everything because Serpent Ascending is your baby, and the other musicians, they would just be pretty much playing stuff that you would have written in Serpent Ascending, correct?
Yeah, and I think maybe it could be tried once. Maybe there could be one of a gig somewhere or a couple of gigs. That could be quite interesting, but I don't have any hurries with it.
Yeah, I noticed there's 8 years between Anuku. Did I pronounce that correctly? Anuku, your 2016 album?
Yeah, it was released 6 years ago.
Yeah, that was 8 years ago. Anuku 2016, and Hyperborean and Folklore came out in 2022. So yeah, that's quite a gap, but I understand that people move at their own pace, especially with solo projects like yours, where you can do anything you pretty much want to, which is great about solo projects. But yeah, that live setting for Serpent Ascending, I would be really interested in experiencing that just because you do have your own distinctive style in death metal and avant-garde metal as espoused in Hyperborean Folklore. So hopefully you are able to get that together someday.
Yeah, I think now when I'm living in Oulu, which is a lot bigger city than the places I lived previously, so maybe there could be like suitable people who could join the live band. Maybe it could work, and I think it should be something special. And yeah,
well, it will certainly be special, I believe, because there's nothing like Serpent Ascending out there. You do have your own distinctive style, and it'd be great to experience that live. So looking at the we're label mates also, by the way, like Goodcraft and Serpent Ascending are on Voidhanger Records, which is kind of how I actually discovered Serpent Ascending some years back, where Luciano was releasing a lot of my music, and I looked at his roster, and I even told him years and years ago, I was like, man, that Serpent Ascending's really great. I believe I was listening to the Enigma Unsettled a lot back then, and once you're very familiarized with death metal, production values don't really mean as much as they used to. Like when you're younger, it's you want the best textural sound when you're listening to music, but the more you're into death metal, the more you're focusing on the riffs. And even if the production isn't the best, if the riffs are really engaging, then you have a great experience. And that's what I had with the Enigma Unsettled. So you've been involved with a lot of different projects in Finland, and I noticed even with Desecresy and Narlik, there's a distinctive Finnish flair to those projects. I know Tommy, he was in Narlik as well, correct? Or was that a Slugathor?
Yeah, Slugathor. Yeah.
Slugathor. Yeah, even in Slugathor, I hear the Desecresy and a little bit of Serpent Ascending in there. And there's this circle of you can pinpoint this certain Finnish flair that only that little circle of musicians have. So how would you say you've developed as a musician over time? You've been involved with a lot of traditional death metal bands, and then of course Desecresy, which is phenomenal. You happen to be on my favorite albums by Desecresy doing vocals. How would you say your musicianship has evolved over time versus once you first started out with Slugathor and projects like that?
Yeah, I think I would say that during all those bands I have worked with, we have all of them have has affected me in some ways. And then when I have started to write my own music in Serpent Ascending, it has like at that time we were working together with Tommy in Slugator and Desecresy. So I think we were like influencing each other with our music maybe, and especially I think maybe I learned a lot about like certain kind of lead guitars from him, and I think his way of doing music had like very big effect on me back then. But maybe now I have been like after I've left Desecresy, it has taken a little bit different kind of direction or something like this.
Yeah, I can certainly hear that with Desecresy. I was listening to the Doom Skeptron, which thank you for the CDs that you gave me. But I've been playing that a lot in my car, driving places, and I'm like in the car listening to music. I can really focus a little bit differently than I do at home because I'm driving, bored, looking at traffic, just fixate on the music. But some of the aspects, like track 7 of, I believe it's like something of the Burning God or something like that. It sounds like a Serpent Ascending lead, the first lead in there. So I can definitely see how like the styles like that you guys have, this very distinctive Finnish style overlapping with all these different projects, Desecresy, Serpent Ascending, Neuralix, Slugathor. So Tommy from Desecresy, you're still in contact with him. You left Desecresy on good terms, still good friends with him. He does the some of the album artwork for Serpent Ascending, correct?
Yeah, he did the album art for the new album and also for the first demo. Actually, don't remember if he did something else as well, but yeah, at least those two. And he's been like very active doing all kind of artwork for different bands and of course for Desecresy, which I think is like works perfectly well with the music.
Yeah, you can definitely go ahead, Shelley.
I was just going to say, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Like all of Desecresy's album covers, just they fit the music very well. It's very kind of spacey, trippy, but also quite brutal and ruthless at the same time. It sort of complements the music really well.
Yeah, and I think he did a very great work with the new Serpent Ascending cover art as well, because, well, I think he hadn't even heard any of the music at that. Of course he had heard the music because, well, I've been sending him the songs and he's been working on like certain drum the album. So sorry for that. Yeah, but yeah, he suddenly just sent me a bunch of artwork without telling anything before, and there was the album cover art. So I didn't have to like ask any artist to do it or any other artist. So that happened quite painlessly.
Did he also do the Enigma Unsettled? Because that is very iconic. The album cover is like one of my favorites. It still has like, how the guys are in the robes. I've seen that with Desecresy stuff, like with the Doom Skeptron. But did he do the Enigma Unsettled cover as well?
No, that was actually an other guy. I don't remember where he was from, but his name is Willie Treeve, and I think he's been doing artwork for a couple of other releases as well, but you don't see his art so much, I think. But he has a very interesting style, and I think the Enigma Unsettled cover was great.
Yeah, it certainly is very iconic. And, like Shelley was saying, it's almost like really brutal in one way where, like you can tell he has like a fixation on like drawing skulls and things like that, especially like Desecresy. But it's really suiting. Like Shelley was saying, it's very suiting artwork for the music. And, it's kind of great that you're keeping a lot of, especially with him, with Desecresy, keeping a lot of the art in-house within that own, little distinctive Finnish circle where, in addition to, being phenomenal musicians, you also have, the visual arts too. in that circle, which is really great. So you were saying a little bit earlier, it's like you want to do like a synthesis of, where Serpent Ascending has been, um, with the more death metal side and more proggy and heavy metal-y side. So that's pretty much the future for Desecresy. Is like you just want to like compound and like composite the styles you've worked with in the past, or there could be more things that we're not expecting that will be in future releases.
Yeah, of course, I cannot say about it so surely. I think there might be some some new things, but I won't be like going to any let's say any non-metal directions or anything like that. I just want to stay within the boundaries of metal music and just do things maybe on a little bit larger scale than I did before. But yeah, I will probably bring back a little bit more death metal elements as well.
I see. And going back to Desecresy, which I had interviewed you for Hessian Firm, a year ago, and you stated that the Doom Skeptron felt like the first like really complete album of Desecresy, and that album happens to be one of my favorites. Like back when I was working out, like Sleep of the Titans used to be my jam. Like I put that on repeat and lift weights and go running and all that. But so that felt like with Desecresy, like the first like real complete form of that. How would you compare like later albums like Stoic Death? Like would you feel that you came in there like more mature in that aspect?
Well, I don't really somehow I don't remember so much about that album and how we were working on it, because I don't know, somehow I can't recall much of that time, but I think we wanted to return a little bit to the style of the Doom, because Cosmic Transcendence was like a little bit like experimenting a little bit shorter tracks and that kind of things. So I think we took a little bit of step back and came back to the form that was used on the Doom Skeptron. But yeah, that's like all I can say about it at the moment, I think.
No worries. Shelley, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so this is slightly changing the subject, but Finland is like known as a very like one of the metal capitals of the world. Like there's so many metal bands from all different styles, but in the extreme end, it's got a very like strong history for death metal and black metal, and they're always slightly more on the kind of more experimental end of the genre. Do you like see your music as sort of fitting in with that tradition of Finnish death metal, or do you think like there is something unique about Finland in that regard that makes the death metals just that little bit different to, I don't know, Sweden or the rest of Europe?
Yeah, I think I've had like a strong connection to all the old Finnish death metal bands from the 90s, and at certain time they were like huge influence. And I think in a way I have like tried to continue in like keeping up with their heritage and so on. And I think it's somehow it's just quite different from like Swedish death metal sounds completely different and so on. But I don't know where it's like coming from. It's just, yeah, I feel connection to this old Finnish death metal. Maybe not so much to today's death metal, but yeah.
Yeah, to the sort of classics from the early 90s. But you are right, at that time you could listen to say an album and immediately recognize if it's like a Swedish death metal album or a Finnish one. It was just, they have very distinctive sounds that just make them identifiable in that way.
Yeah, I think the Finnish albums are somehow quite a lot darker in some way, and there's like more, little bit like a black metal style of riffs here and there, and maybe the sound is somehow darker, while the Swedish bands were doing a lot of this entombed kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a much more pronounced like punk influence in there as well with the Swedish bands. Like,
yeah.
So, just a little anecdote. When I was in Finland, I thought everyone hated me for a while because Finnish people are very reserved. They're very introverted compared to very westernized, Americanized people. Which I've been told here in the U.S. that I'm introverted and reserved, compared to like Finnish people. It's night and day. So I had wondered, just like the first time we met Jarno, we were throwing back some beers quite a bit, but that loosened us up to chat and headbang and all that, listen to metal. But like when I met Marco from Beharit for the first time, I didn't know if he liked me or anything because he only talked when he had something to say. He would not do like small talk or anything like that. And I remember I brought this up to your friend who's in a Cosmic Church, which I believe you're on one of their albums. And he gave me a great exposition about how Finnish people are very reserved. And do you feel like Finnish people tend to have like a darker disposition compared to like other countries? You look at the Finnish pagan roots, which we talked a little bit about, but just for instance, before Finland was Christianized through Sweden, there was a lot of pagan practices, such as people would kill criminals and then put their bones and hang them from their houses to ward off evil spirits. And also heard from another friend, while we were hiking, we saw these sacrificial stones, where people would give out offerings to their ancestors, through the birds or whatnot, and for good luck and all that. And just the general vibe I got from Finnish people is that they're very reserved. And there's also, it might be through the pagan roots or some other line, but there's also kind of like a dark side to Finnish people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course, you could say there is like a dark side, but I don't know. It's just, I think it maybe doesn't have so like a mystical background, because I think it's just maybe we just don't have like a similar kind of small talk or anything like that. And then there might be like many different things that are like causing it. Like it could be the war history, and it could be like many different things. But I don't know. I don't think it's like connected to any like any dark side. It just happens to be that people here communicate in a different way, and I've been like trying to learn a little bit like small talk when I meet like people from different countries and so on, so they don't think of me just like of some asshole or something. But yeah, it's like a little bit difficult to say where it comes from.
Must be something in the water up there. Just
yeah.
It's very conducive to making great metal and not doing any bullshit small talk.
Yeah.
We could do some of that here.
Yeah, but personally, I think that small talk is quite nice after all. So I think it would be good more Finnish people learn a little bit about that, and maybe to say something nice to other people.
So my first experience was with a Finnish person, like authentic Finnish, was when I was going from London to Helsinki. I went to the airport, and the flight attendant for my plane trip, she just raced right in front of me, and it was just her and I at the gate, but she made a firm stance to get there before I could. And so we were just kind of sitting there staring at each other, and she ended up like being my individual flight attendant on the flight from London to Helsinki. And she was chatting to me because I guess I have strange features, like, part Czechoslovakian, part German, part Anglo, and all that. But I guess she couldn't tell like if I was German or whatever. And she was just so amazed, like, "Oh, you speak English." And but then, I was in the exit row for the emergency exit, so I had all the leg room, and she was sitting right in front of me, like staring at me, and we just sat there in silence, just staring at each other for like a few hours. Well, I mean, she did the flight attendant stuff, but whenever she sat down, she would just kind of just stare at me, and we didn't even talk. That was my first like real experience with a Finnish person. Then I get to Finland, and I meet Marco Leho from Biharit, and he's kind of the same way. Like, he only talks when he has something to say, and you kind of wondering, is like, does this guy like me or what? Like, and he was being really friendly when he did talk, but then he'd just be silent for long periods. And with you, it's like, granted, we had the beer and we did a lot of small talk and chatted about various things because we have a lot in common. But just getting through that mold of just like a Westerner, like American, getting through to Finnish people, it is night and day with the cultures, with how we interact with each other. So yeah, Shelly, go ahead.
Oh no, I didn't have anything to add to that other than just yeah, I in a way I kind of like that as well. Like, I know small talk serves a purpose day to day, and it's nice to be just, polite to people and stuff. But also I get told a lot of the time that I'm very reserved and I don't sort of talk enough or make people feel welcome or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, maybe I'll get on better in Finland, or maybe that would be too much for me. Like,
I think in Finland you would be an extrovert, Shelly, honestly.
I think I would, yeah.
I heard about people going to funerals and taking like group happy pictures together, but you elaborated that it may just be because there's so much distance between those people that funerals is like the only time they can get together. Therefore, they take a lot of group pictures and post on Instagram and all that.
Yeah, that could be one reason, and maybe at some point in people's life they don't meet each other so much anymore because everyone's having their own things to do, and then you get into this period of life when you start having many funerals and only meet people there. So something like that happens.
Cool. So being like, we've discussed quite a bit about your roots and all the various bands you played with up to your newest release, Hyperborean Folklore, and we know quite a bit about the direction you want to take Serpent Sending in, possibly do a live band, get that going for the live experience, which I think that would be a phenomenal thing to experience. Just like I know we chatted a little bit about like how you approach music, but with the idea in your head, but the way you layer things, and I find that to be one of the most phenomenal aspects of Hyperborean Folklore, is that you're really able to expand like a very intuitive way, a simple melody or motif, and just keep expanding and expanding and expanding. And that kind of is derived from, you have the idea in your head first, and then you're able to play it on guitar eventually. And then from there, you just add all these extra textural components. And it sounds, that's like one of the most unique things about your styling is the way you layer things. So you mentioned that you were partly influenced like with the atmosphere like Graveland and bands like that, which he did, some of that layering with some of his albums, especially Memory and Destiny, if I remember correctly. But would you say that that might be like a part of the approach you uh when you flesh out an idea with multiple layers, like stuff like Graveland?
Well, I don't think so. I think that initially I got this idea of starting to write kind of layered stuff came from, I think, from Sentence, not from here. And I think there's quite a lot of all kind of layers and two guitars doing different, almost playing it out like different riffs or something like that at the same time. So I think that was one of the first albums I heard where I got this idea of starting to write something like that. And of course, all the old metal bands with dual guitar harmonies and those.
Yeah, just
Yeah, it's like
go ahead.
it's like almost counterpoint in a way, especially on like North from Here as well. Like you said, the sort of the riffs are a kind of piece of music in their own right, but then you put them together and they create something more than the sum of their parts. But that's also like you need to get that right at the sort of production level as well, not just composing, but like getting the levels right and pitching it right within the mix as well. And that's another thing that sort of works really well on the Serpent Ascending albums is yeah, it's sort of a testament to the production values and making sure that that really complements the sort of melodic layering as well.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear that you have enjoyed these things this much. And I think I've been like trying to learn the mixing process and how to do it, because Hyperborean Folklore was maybe like the first album I had to mix by myself. So I'm happy that it works on some
You had
level.
to do a bit of learning on the job, like while you were doing it, to learn about the production of it as well.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that what kind of guitar things would work together, but then it's like different thing playing it all and trying to get everything audible and sound somehow good, because you have to do quite a lot of like I don't know even how you call all those things that is done during the mix.
Well, it's almost like an art form in itself. There's so much to it, like of getting it all correct and at the right levels, and all the effects and all that. Yeah, it's kind of like a dark art that only a few people know how to control.
Yeah, but maybe the next album will be a little bit easier in this way too.
Yeah, certainly. I keep going back to personal anecdotes while we were in Finland and hanging out. But I remember we went to the Helsinki Philharmonic because they're doing some Mahler, and then they did Shostakovich Eighth Symphony, and so they play the Mahler, and I'm sitting there and have you on my left and Marco Alejo from Biarritz on my right, and we're kind of like Marco and I were squirming in our seats during the Mahler, and you're just soaking that up. And afterwards, during intermission, and I was like, "What'd you think?" And you loved it, and Marco was like, "Yeah, I didn't like it that much," but once that Sostakovich hit, that was completely different. Like, remember you seeing we're right up front in the orchestra pit, so the best possible sound of the orchestra that we were hearing, and just up there right in front watching all those musicians perform, you were like bedazzled. You were taken to you're transported to like a purely musical realm after that experience. Like, you had a hard time summing up what you had just seen and experienced. So did you have more time to reflect on that, like what that experience was like when you saw that Shostakovich symphony?
Well, maybe I don't have much more words about it, but yes, it was powerful experience, and I was like holding tears and that kind of thing. And during the Sostakovich part, and I don't know, it's so like intensive when I didn't even know how loud it becomes, and it was just so powerful. And I think I enjoyed the Mahler because I got like some, maybe a little bit like inspirations from there, like hearing something that they were playing and thinking that, okay, I could maybe do something similar with like in some of my future album. I'm not speaking about making any similar music, but kind of like having a little bit of ideas from here and there, how could some things could be done, or something like that. So it was quite inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I view classical performances very similar. Like you just see like this ensemble of musicians up on stage, and what I tend to do is go in orchestra pit like we're able to see everything very thoroughly and very in focus. Where like you saw this cello players just having a great time of their lives while performing all the low end aspects of that symphony and all of that, and it was a great experience. And but yeah, it's like especially with Sostakovich, some of his other symphonies like the 10th and 12th, especially the 12th, is very fucking metal. You listen to the 12th, what you immediately hear, in the opening section, the first movement, is some passages that would not be far removed from a Slayer album. And then as the symphony progresses, it becomes more and more percussive, like metal tends to be. And it's a great experience. Like many years before metal ever existed, this type of music was already being written for classical ensembles for the full orchestra. And I really had a great time. That not only did I get to see the Helsinki Philharmonic, I got to see it with the guy from Serpent Ascending on my left and the guy from Beheaded on my right. And I got to interpret how they viewed the music that they just experienced. And what was consistent about you is like everything that you saw, you loved. And, I've been in classical for a long time, so I might be a little snobby in some aspects, but it's still great to see people get really, enthused about the music that they're experiencing, especially in classical music that they may not be 100% familiar with, but once they get it thrusted in their face, it's like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And this what's great about you too is like you have that open mind, and you definitely see that in Hyperborean folklore, where perhaps much of the audience needs to be open-minded before they even listen to that. Is that something you expected with the album like reviews and all that you've gotten? Is the reviewers tend to have like an open mind before they write about it?
Yeah, I was like, when the album wasn't released yet, I was a little bit afraid of how people would react to it, because I think that I'm kind of have like somewhat open mind to different kind of music and different kind of metal. So reading some of the reviews has been like a little bit underwhelming, because I feel that people have different kind of expectations, and maybe they assume something else from what bands should be doing and so on. So, but yeah, it's something you can't do much about. Of course, I'm very happy to read all the positive reviews as well, and there has been like maybe few of them, but yeah.
So ultimately, you're creating music for yourself, correct? You don't really, getting a good review here and there is nice, but ultimately, the music is just you wanting to express the ideas that you have, and that's what's most important, correct?
Well, of course, I think that I kind of want to create something I enjoy, but I do want to make music that maybe some other people could enjoy too. And of course, I will probably not reach any like big amounts of listeners and anything like that, but I'm happy to have like some people who enjoy my music and maybe send some feedback and so on. So I also want to do something. I have like received and gained so much from all metal music, so I just want to like maybe give something back. So I think that's how I think about it.
I say, yeah, I definitely see that you're very, very passionate about metal. You're in it until the end. And a lot of us tend to be that way, whether we like it or not. Like, I get into classical music but it's like I always love metal. That's why I have this podcast and all that. But yeah, it's that's great that you want to give back because metal has been such a big factor in your life. And the way that you talk about metal is sheer passion. It's sheer passion that is something that is part of yourself. The way it helped mold the young Jarno, essentially, listening to all that metal and being very impactful on your own life, your own outlooks, and you wanting to give back is something that I think a lot of people in metal want to do. And like having this podcast, for instance, or having a band, or a website in Shelley's instance where he writes about metal nonstop on Hate Meditations, which I have no idea how he's able to write so many reviews, but he is a machine. But yeah, Shelley, I know you have some thoughts on that as well about like people wanting to give back to the metal community because it's so profound to us on an individual level.
Well, yeah, it's also like, as you mentioned, it's rare for a band like Serpent Ascending to, break out and, start making money or whatever. And a lot of extreme metal bands, yeah, they're doing it for the passion of it. And that's how it's like self-sustaining because everyone just, does work voluntarily within the scene, whether it is in a band or, yeah, putting on gigs or promoting or whatever. Like the ratio of people actually participating in the culture to fans of it is very, very high in metal. It's rare to meet a metalhead that doesn't have, their own band or some kind of thing that they do to contribute. Because yeah, there's something about it that just makes people want to keep the thing going, and that kind of means that it doesn't matter if it makes money or not, because people are willing to just feed their free time into it to keep it going.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. So we've touched upon a lot of things today, and I think we touched into the meat and potatoes of Serpent Ascending, especially with Hyperborean folklore. And just to kind of reiterate, the approach that Jarno has with Hyperborean folklore and other Serpent Ascending releases is like there's this great intuitive aspect of how the music should flow, almost in a classical sense, where a lot of people can predict, what's coming up in a classical piece because it's purposely written that way. You have the sonata form where the themes are reintroduced and all of that, and even with some Baroque pieces, you're able to kind of anticipate what's coming next. But there is that aspect of being very intuitive and Serpent Ascending, but also just like the layers that come out, it really makes it beautiful, and it's not something that you immediately expect, like you might would in a Baroque or classical piece of it playing the same melody or something like that. But no, just the way it expands and grows and becomes multi-layered, it's very, very beautiful stuff, which I don't think a lot of bands really do that nowadays. I mean, granted, there's early death metal which had flowing aspects, and now metal is turned into being more like based on rhythm and percussion. But Serpent Ascending is very. I don't like that word epic because it denotes duration, even though the songs are long. But what makes it epic in my eyes is how it's flowing, multi-layered, and there's a lot of little parts that make up the whole. So Jarno, I want to thank you 1,000 times for coming on the podcast today. I will be playing some, music off the new, Serpent Ascending album, Hyperborean Folklore. So thank you for coming on the program today, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have anything else you want to say before we wrap up today?
Well, I think I've had my say for this time.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure, and we did have some technical issues today, so I'll try to clean that up. And Shelly, thank you for coming on. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for chatting with us. I would definitely say it's going to be one of the albums of the year for me. I know we're only halfway through it, but I'm pretty confident about that. So yeah, it's been great to chat to you about it some more.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, cheers, and thank you for listening today. We did have a couple of technical issues, which I'll clean up in post-production, hopefully. And here's some Serpent Ascending you can listen to.